Vehicroid Archetype was a set of cards originally used by Cyrus Truesdale in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. Cyrus was a character who rose the ranks, starting out as a Slifer Red, brimming with self-doubt, eventually growing in confidence into a raw yellow, and then finally ending the series as a full-fledged Obelisk Blue. And that's not all. He would also overcome his inferiority complex with his older brother Zane, going so far as to even absorb his brother's deck into his own. And despite my feelings of this Roid Cyber Dragon Cyber Dark hybrid deck, to be fair, it did win him his final duel, where he actually got out his brother's Cyber Dark Dragon using Power Bond and boosted its attack with Dragon Roid to attack and go for game. So with a character arc like that, how could I not like the Vehicroids? Especially since those little anthropomorphized vehicles released alongside the Cyber Dragons in the 2005 pack Cybernetic Revolution. Although, I'll be honest, I was going for the Cyber Dragon stuff when I was opening these packs. Getting some of the Roid stuff on the side, it was fine, I didn't mind. Fast forward 19 years and there I am, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel live on stream on twitch.tv/TGSanime. I thought, why don't I play the Vehicroid deck? I thought I'd give it a go. And do you know what I found out? No, we haven't won. He negated my effect. I still have to pay the price for playing Power Bonds. And it's more than this old heart can take. I learned that the Vehicroids are one of the worst archetypes in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. And it's such a shame. Look, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I had so much hope for this archetype, and I thought, I know it's been a while, but surely with the little bit of support they've had, they're at least somewhat playable. They're not. They need so much more help and so much more added to them to even make them viable. But the question becomes, well, how did this happen? Well, a lot of things. It's important to clarify that Roid archetype is actually the umbrella name for two similar but separate archetypes. We have the Vehicroid archetype, which appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, used by Cyrus. These monsters are primarily Earth machines that focus on fusing to create the Super Vehicroid fusions. Alternatively, we have the Speedroids. These appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 anime used by Yugioh. These are primarily wind machines that focus on synchroing to create the high Speedroid synchros. All that these guys share in common is just the word Roid in both of their names. However, because of this, the issue arises that, due to this overlapping naming scheme, it bleeds into each other's archetypes' effects. More specifically, it restricts the Vehicroids. This is because now any new Vehicroid support that gets printed must specify that you can add any Roid you want, as long as it's not wind attributed. This is done to make sure the two archetypes remain separated. As an example, the two newest cards in the Vehicroid archetype follow these restrictions with their effects. For example, Mixeroid, which was released in 2017, has the effect that you contribute one machine monster, special summon one non-wind Roid monster from your deck, pay half your life points, banish any number of machine monsters from your graveyard, including this card, special summon from your extra deck one Roid fusion monster with the same level as the number of those banished monsters, ignoring its summoning conditions, but destroy it during the end phase. The other card is Dragon Roid, which released in 2021. It has the effect, once per turn, if this card is in your graveyard, you can make this card become a dragon monster while in the grave until the end of the turn. That effect has absolutely nothing to do with this archetype. It will never benefit you in any way, shape, or form. It's just a reference to how in the anime it helped because it could equip to Cyber Dark Dragon. But I mean, you can mix this deck with Cyber Darks, but oh god. Anyway, its other effect is you can discard this card to activate one of these effects. Add one non-Windroid monster from your deck to your hand. For this turn, the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent can activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. Now, some of you might be asking, wait a minute, why don't the Speedroids have this issue? Why is it only the Vehicroids that suffer with this? Well, the reason is because the Speedroids are all called Speedroid. When they search for a card, they can actually specify Speedroid, meaning that none of the Vehicroids can be affected by this. Whereas for the Vehicroids, since they aren't actually called Vehicroids, that's right, they're only called Roid. The reason for that is because their names are just whatever machine they are based on, mashed together with the word Roid. That's how their naming convention goes. It makes this deck a nightmare to support. To extrapolate on that as well, cards that just have Roid in their name also technically are part of the Roid archetype. It's wacky, but it's true. The solution to this problem would be to do a mass name change for the archetype. Make all of the main deck Vehicroid cards have the word Vehicroid at the start of their names. Alternatively, you could do what they did for Summon Skull, where you add in their text box that they are treated as a Vehicroid monster. Now, I've got a question for all of you. Explain this to me. We now know that Wind and Roids don't mix together because they don't want to affect the Speedroids. So a monster like Gyroid, which is a Wind monster, that's fine. That came out ages and ages ago. It wasn't future-proof. It's fine. But then why on earth did they make the two newest Roid cards Wind attributed? I thought the whole point of this was to separate the Wind ones from the non-Wind ones, and then you're gonna make two new monsters that are Wind attributed, that have effects that search, but they can't search or special summon each other. It's insane! Why would they do that? I don't understand. My only answer could be is that, like, oh, Dragonroid was Wind in the anime, but just change it. Mixeroid doesn't even feel like a Wind monster. It doesn't make any sense to me. Do they not want you searching this card or anything? Why? It's a decent monster. Let me search it. It's just, I don't know. And I'm honest with you, the naming scheme, it's only the start of this deck's problems. There's also the issue that the main deck monsters have absolutely no synergy or goal for the end game. Not only that, but the extra deck boss monsters that could possibly get you the win are so extremely difficult to summon due to their hyper-specific materials, it basically means you're rarely going to ever see them in a duel. And I mean, with the amount of resources you are pouring into these cards, like you need 4 monsters and 1 fusion card, that's 5 cards already, just to get a monster that has no protection as well. So if your opponent just like sneezes on your monster, it's dead. You're pretty much going to lose the duel. There's no comeback ability from that. But, oh, the worst crime of them all. Something I didn't know until I started playing with them. I realized, wait a minute. Their in-archetype fusion card, Vehicroid Connection Zone, doesn't work for 5 out of their 8 fusions. Listen to this effect. Fusion summon 1 Vehicroid fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and its effects cannot be negated. At first glance, reading this card's effect, you'd be thinking, this is actually a decent card, what are you talking about? Well, you will notice it uses Vehicroid as the only card you can summon with this card's effects, and what you say, the extra monsters are Vehicroids. No, they're not. Out of these 8, these 5 can't be summoned, meaning only these 3 can, because they're the only ones with Vehicroid in their card name. And we're not done, because to make matters worse, the 3 that you can summon, one of them you can't summon unless you already have a fusion monster that's a Roid on the field, which you can't actually make with Vehicroid Connection Zone. So you'll have to either make one of the really, really hard ones that require 3 specific monsters or 4 specific monsters, or you have to play another type of fusion card like Polymerization to make one of the smaller ones so that you can fuse that to the field so you can get another Roid somewhere so you can play Vehicroid Connection Zone so you can summon one of the bigger monsters or the only generic monster you can into defense with protection. It's too much. Now, let's be fair. To play devil's advocate here, this deck was made a long time ago. It wasn't future-proof. We can't really fault it for that. However, it's such a shame because some archetypes like Cyber Dragons or Heroes, they kind of stand the test of time. They kind of got lucky with how they worked, and they did work later on. And to be honest with you, The original heroes, they did require very specific monsters to summon very specific fusion monsters. So what's the difference with the Vehicroids? Well, they never really got much support, so they never really had a chance to sort of bounce back, but their problems just keep stacking and stacking, so it's just such a shame. However, I think we've talked enough in general. Let's actually take a look at these monsters. The only vanilla monster in the archetype is Vehicroid. Its flavor text reads, the most lovable and friendly of all Vehicroids. It can arm itself with training wheels. Training wheels was a real card, by the way, which I'm pretty sure Zane laughed at.
That's not all. Then I'll add this, a pair of training wheels. Laugh all you want, Zane.
It's never been released in the real world, but basically all it does is it can only be equipped to Vehicroid, and when it's equipped to it, it lets it attack directly. And after it does, this card and the monster are banished and returned during the player's next standby phase. Now, in the anime, if you mashed two Vehicroids together, like specifically these two, you would get the fusion monster, Pair Vehicroid. Luckily, they were smart and they said, no one wants to play two vanilla monsters in their deck, so let's just make it a bit more generic to summon. So they changed the summoning criteria to just two machine monsters with the same name. Because of this is actually one of the better Roid fusions. Its effect would be simple, just allowing it to attack directly. However, since it can be boosted with things like Power Bond, Limit Removal, it can do some OTK sometimes. So you know what? Pair Vehicroid actually gets a thumbs up from me. Not bad. Gyroid. Its effect is the first time this card would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed. Steamroid. If this card attacks an opponent's monster, this card gains 500 attack. If this card is attacked, it loses 500 attack. By combining these two monsters together, you get Steam Gyroid, also known as Cyrus's favorite card. Which I don't know why, because it's got like no effect. I don't know why they didn't give this card like an amalgamation of its two fusion materials' effect to make it like a little bit better. Like it can't be destroyed once per turn, and then when it attacks, it can increase its attack by 500 or 600 or something. Maybe it can boost itself up to 3000 attack, and then when it's attacked, maybe it still loses a bit of attack every now and then. Like at least that would have been decent, you know? It would have been something not that bad. What's insane as well is Steamroid, the fusion material that makes up this card, when that attacks, it has more attack than this monster. They should have done what they did with the next fusion monster, actually. Ambulance-roid. When a Roid monster is added from the graveyard to the hand, special summon it. Rescue-roid. When a Roid monster you control is destroyed by battle, return that monster to the hand. So you can see these two monsters work together while they're on the field simultaneously. However, when you mash them together, you get Ambulance Rescue-roid, who has a combination of these two monsters' effects. Once per turn, when a monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can special summon that monster into defense. See, was that so hard? Actually, it was, because the fused monster effect is actually slightly weaker than having both on the field, because it's a once per turn now, and it does summon them into defense, but it's fine, sort of. UFO-roid. When this card is destroyed by battle, you can special summon one machine monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck in face-up attack. Now, this monster can actually fuse with any warrior-type monster to create a new fused form. This summoning is a reference to the anime, as we saw Cyrus merge this monster with Jaden's elemental hero Tempest to create UFO-roid Fighter. This monster's attack and defense becomes equal to the combined attack of the two monsters used for its summon. And yes, before you ask, that is an elemental hero Tempest flying on a Segway. Pretty cool. And for the final non-Vehicroid fusion, just a Roid fusion, we have Barbaroid, the ultimate battle machine. Requires 5 machine-type Roid monsters to be summoned. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. This card cannot attack opponents directly. However, after damage calculation, if this card attacked an opponent's monster, negate the effects of that monster, including in the graveyard. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. Now, if you wonder where this monster came from, because it actually looks pretty cool and its effect isn't that bad, well, it actually came from the manga. It was made by fusing 5 currently unreleased Roids together, which were pretty cool because they were all named after the German numbers for 1 to 5. This is cool because Cyrus's brothers Zane's Cyber Dragons do something very similar as well. So it's a nice little nod to Zane and Cyrus's parallels with their decks. Now, like I was saying, this monster's pretty awesome, but it's really hard to summon. 5 fusion materials. You've got to have them all either in your hands or on the field, and a polymerization to fuse them all together. That's a big investment. So why did they make this so hard? Well, they didn't. The reason it's so hard is because we're missing a card in the archetype. You see, you're not supposed to summon using monsters in the hand or field. You're supposed to use the graveyard with the unreleased spell, Ultimate Machine Union. Basically, this card is Zane's Overload Fusion, but its effect is fusion summon one Roid monster from your extra deck by banishing the fusion materials from your graveyard. That was all the fusion materials we can't summon with the in-archetype fusion spell, Connection Zone. So now, let's take a look at the cards we can summon with Connection Zone, the Super Vehicroids. Super Vehicroid Jumbo Drill requires Steamroid, Drillroid, and Submarineroid to be summoned. Its effect is that it can inflict piercing battle damage. It's just Cyrus's version of Cyber End Dragon, albeit harder to summon and weaker. The materials that make up this monster that we haven't covered yet are Drillroid, which has the effect before damage calculation. This card attacks a defense position monster, destroy that monster. Submarineroid, this card can attack directly. However, it can only inflict damage equal to its original attack. At the end of the damage step, if this card battled, you can change this card to defense. The second Super Vehicroid we have is Super Vehicroid Stealth Union. It's made using Truckroid, Expressroid, Drillroid, and Stealthroid. Once per turn, you can target one face-up non-machine monster on the field, equip that target to this card. That's an okay effect, that's alright. While equipped with a monster by this effect, this card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. That's pretty good as well, that's pretty decent. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflicts piercing battle damage. Oh wow, this is actually a really good, it's hard to summon, but with 3800 attack, attacks everything, pierce everything, get rid of a problematic monster. This isn't so bad. What's the, wait, oh, there's a bit more of the effect. If this card attacks, its original attack is halved. Why? Why? Anyway, its materials that we didn't cover are Truckroid. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, equip the destroyed monster to this card. This card gains attack equal to the combined attack of the monsters equipped by this effect. This card's a little bit too slow for modern day standards, but this is actually my favorite Roid monster. I like this card, I think it's kind of cool. Expressroid, when this card is summoned, you can target 2 Roid monsters in your graveyard, except Expressroid, add those targets to your hand. This is technically the best Roid. Expressroid is very strong because adding 2 cards from the graveyard back to your hand is pretty strong. But the benefit of this is you can play this in speed Roids, and you can add some speed Roids from the graveyard back to your hand. So it's actually pretty decent. It's one of the better Roid monsters in the deck. Stealthroid. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, target one spell or trap on the field, destroy that target, if you control another Roid monster. Finally, we have the newest boss monster, Super Vehicroid Mobile Base. It requires 1 Roid fusion monster and 1 Roid monster. Now you'd think, just like Parapsychroid, having generic fusion materials would be a good thing. Well, it would be if it wasn't for the fact that it requires a Roid fusion monster for its summon. Since they're all so hard to get out, you need to use an alternative fusion method to get them out, since Vehicroid Connection Zone won't get out the easier to summon ones. So the best way of doing this is by cheesing them out, with a card like Ready Fusion or Instant Fusion to summon one of your normal Roids to the field. But we can also cheese the cheese as well, since this monster only needs a Roid to be summoned. We can actually use Elemental Hero Neck Roid Shaman. It's a Roid, it's a fusion, it meets the criteria. It's insane, right? Anyway, Super Vehicroid Mobile Base's effect is you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, special summon 1 Roid monster from your deck or extra deck with attack less than or equal to that monster. Once per turn during the end phase, you can target 1 Roid monster in your main monster zone, return that monster you control to the hand, and if you do, move this card you control to that monster's monster zone. That last effect, if it sounds a bit wacky, why would you want to move this monster around? When this card came out, it came out during Master Rule 4. Master Rule 4 was where they introduced the extra monster zone, and you could only summon extra deck monsters into that zone, or a zone a link monster points to. But they eventually went back on this, but this effect was a way to move it out the extra monster zone, so you could spam all your Vehicroids to the field, which no one has ever said in their entire life, but at least that option was there. Side note, with this monster having 0 attack, if you want to do damage with this monster, you have to put it in attack and hope you have the field spell on the field, which, fun fact by the way, the field spell is this monster, but it's transformed. Kind of cool. This is also a little bit of another problem because, yeah, you can put this monster into attack and risk attacking into your opponent's monsters. If they manage to destroy that field spell, get it off the field, you'll now sit with a 0 attack monster on the field, which just can't protect itself. So that's gonna suck. Anyway, Megaroid City's effect is you can target one of the cards you control, destroy it, and if you do, add one Roid card from your deck to your hand. During damage calculation, if your Roid monster battles, you can send one Roid monster from your deck to the graveyard, switch the original attack and defense of your battling monster during damage calculation only. You can only use each effect of Megaroid City once per turn. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. The turn you activate either of this card's effects, even if this card leaves the field. It's a shame this card only works once, and the fact it restricts you to only fusion monsters as well. It's just more stipulations on an archetype that's already struggling to do stuff, so why make it harder for them? I don't get it. It's a new card as well. Anyway, with this card, you can destroy one of your cards in the field. Ideally, you would destroy something like Wonder Gary, which lets you, when destroyed, special summon a level 4 or lower machine Roid monster from your hand. Or perhaps you could destroy one of the best cards in the archetype, to be fair, if you ever get the chance to play it, a Mergeroid Call. It's a counter trap with the effect when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated while you control a Roid fusion monster. Negate the activation, then send all cards with the same name as that target from the activating player's deck and extra deck to the graveyard. You can banish this card from the graveyard, target one Roid monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. It's actually a decent card, it's just you have to have a fusion Roid on the field, and it's just tough to pull off. We have one last support card in the archetype, which is Supercharge. If an opponent's monster declares an attack, while all monsters you control are machine Roid monsters, you can draw 2 new cards. Finally, we have all of the miscellaneous Roid monsters that don't fuse with each other. We'll just do a quick speed round of this, or should I say a speed Roid of this? It's punching down, I'm so sorry. Armoroid. If this card is tribute summoned by tributing at least one Roid monster, banish all spells and traps on the field. Decoy-Roid. While this card is face up on your field, your opponent cannot select a face-up monster as an attack target except Decoy-Roid. Jetroid. At the time this card is selected as an attack target by an opponent's monster, you can activate trap cards from your hand. Patroid. Once per turn during your main phase, you can look at one face-down card your opponent controls, then return it to its original position. Carrier-Roid. When an opponent activates a card's effect that targets and destroys a spell or trap card you control, you can discard one card to negate the activation and destroy that card. Finally, we also have Shuttle-Roid. This is the only Roid that has never been printed internationally, allegedly due to copyright issues. Something to do with a space shuttle or something? Not sure why. Its effect is when this card is targeted for an attack, you can banish this card. During your next standby phase, special summon this card, banished by this effect. If summoned this way, inflict 1000 damage to the opponent. We also have the Anime and Duel Links exclusive Roid card, which actually saw some better play in Duel Links, and I'd kind of like it in the real world, but it hasn't been printed yet, and that is Kite-Roid. You can discard this card from your hand during damage calculation after a direct attack. Any battle damage you would receive from that direct attack becomes 0. Only once, if you remove this card from the game when it is in the graveyard, any battle damage you would receive from a direct attack becomes 0. So now, the question becomes, can we save this archetype? And my answer to that, I don't know. I don't think so. This has honestly probably been one of the most negative I've been towards an archetype. And it's only because it's such a shame, because I do like the Vehicroids, but I was really annoyed after playing with them and realizing just how bad they were and like how little their support really helped. And they just need so much more help. They need a full retrain. They need new support cards. They probably need an overhaul of all of their monsters as well. They need like a win mechanic built in, and they definitely need all their extra monsters called Super Vehicroids and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll see support, but I would like to in the future, and I would like to see them get better. If you would like to see me suffer playing with the Vehicroids, I am currently playing them for this entire month of January. However, if you want to watch the Vehicroids do well, then watch Cyrus duel with them. He doesn't do that well with them, he does lose with them, but still, you know what I mean? You can watch either one of those. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Catch you later.